The Penny Ghost, a true story, written and read by D.E. Ladd. I'm calling it a ghost, but I don't know what it was exactly. The story I'm about to tell you is true, and though it isn't as horrifying as some stories you may have heard, the experience remains with me. Every now and then I think about the Penny Ghost. To this day, the mystery of who or what it was continues to tug at my imagination. I often wonder if it's still out there somewhere, in someone else's house right now. I was 9 years old at the time, the youngest of 3 latchkey kids who had no problem staying home alone. It was a lazy autumn afternoon in our quiet neighborhood. A thick blanket of ashen clouds blotted out the sun, making it a perfect day to watch cartoons. I sat in the living room on the firm green couch, my head turned to the left to watch our black and white TV. The living room measured roughly 20 feet by 12. On one of the longer walls, the picture window faced north, and the couch sat beneath it facing the TV, which sat against the opposite wall. I had the front door open, and a stream of gray light from the west oozed in through the storm door windows. My older brother was at a friend's house, and my parents and my older sister had gone somewhere to do something I had no interest in. So I turned to Woody Woodpecker and Popeye for company. At the age of 9, having the TV, and the entire house, to myself was a gift. I could watch whatever I wanted on the whopping 2 or 3 cable channels we had at the time. Popeye gulped down an entire can of spinach, and as he was about to unleash a healthy dose of two-fisted justice, a metallic sound arose from behind me. It was the sound of a door opening. When I first heard the noise, I was sitting with my back against one arm of the couch. Behind me was a small closet built into the east wall, and 90 degrees south of that closet was a door leading to the upstairs. Upon hearing the distinct sound, I turned around to investigate. The door to the upstairs was open about 6 to 8 inches. A narrow slash of darkness filled the gap. I stared at the ajar door, puzzled. But it wasn't the strangest thing in the world. An unlatched door easing open by itself. However, I refused to allow a door behind me to remain ajar. I'd seen far too many horror movies on Creature Double Feature to know that anything could emerge from the darkness at any time. I hopped up off the couch and pushed the door closed. The knob was in good working order, and I heard it click shut. I returned to the couch and watched as Popeye delivered his punishment to a band of pirates, or whatever they were. A minute later, I heard a familiar sound. I twisted at the waist to turn and look behind me. The door to the upstairs was ajar again. My reaction at that moment was more puzzlement than fear. I know the door had been latched, I was sure of it. I had heard the click with my own ears. And yet, the door hung there in its frame, partially open to expose the same 6 to 8 inch slash of darkness. I went over the possibilities to try to figure out how the door had opened on its own again. The most likely explanation was a gust of wind from an open window upstairs. As sure as I was about the door being latched, I brushed that detail aside to consider another possibility. Someone else was in the house. At that age, my siblings and I spent a lot of time scaring the crap out of each other. We would hide under each other's beds, in dark closets and behind doors, and then spring out and roar to see how loud we could make the victim scream. The idea of a ghost opening the door didn't make sense. Ghosts haunted older homes, usually places where the spirit's body had died. Our house had been built for my family shortly before I was born. No one else had ever lived there, and no one had ever died there. And to the best of my knowledge, the house had not been built on an ancient burial ground. After ruling out a supernatural presence, I settled on a more plausible explanation. My older brother had returned home and snuck back inside while I wasn't looking, and was now trying to scare me. Either that, or there was a psychotic killer upstairs. The one major flaw in my theory of another person being in the house, to try to scare me or to murder me or both, was the fact that the stairs always creaked. No person, no matter how small or how light, could walk up or down those stairs without making them creak every step of the way. How, then, could a person creep down the stairs, open the door a crack, and then creep back upstairs to hide without making a sound? I didn't have an answer to that question. Nevertheless, my imagination kicked in, and I decided that a deadly stranger had somehow snuck into the house and was toying with me by opening the door at the foot of the stairs. It was an absurd idea, and I knew it. If I had actually believed that, I would have run out of the house screaming. Instead, I used the opportunity to engage in some harmless make-believe. I pretended there was a killer in the house hiding upstairs, and I was going to catch him. I hopped up off the couch and nudged open the ajar door. The stairway was empty, of course. A dull rectangle of light framed the dark paneling at the head of the stairs between the two closets. No sign of anyone up there. The floors upstairs creaked as well, which made moving about unheard virtually impossible. I closed the door and trotted into the kitchen. Even at the age of 9, I knew it was unwise to investigate strange happenings alone without a weapon. I pulled open the drawer where we kept all the cutlery and grabbed the biggest butcher knife I could find. Gripping it in my small fist gave me a rush of make-believe courage that made me giggle. Yes, I was a strange child, and I haven't changed all that much. With the big knife in hand, I returned to the door leading upstairs. I turned the knob and yanked the door open with the dramatic flair of a veteran detective hunting a homicidal maniac. A tight scowl marked my face. Whoever was hiding upstairs in my house and fiddling with the door at the bottom of the stairs was going to be sorry. I didn't have any spinach to give me strength, but I had a big-ass knife, and I didn't appreciate being interrupted during cartoons. I held the knife at the ready and ascended the stairs. The orange shag carpet softened my creaking footsteps only slightly. At the head of the stairs, I aimed the knife left and right, first toward the bedroom I shared with my older brother, and then toward my sister's room. The first thing I noticed was that all the windows upstairs were closed, which crushed my theory of a stiff breeze nudging the door open. I listened for even the smallest sound. All I could hear was the faint rattling laughter of a woody woodpecker coming from the living room. I stepped into my bedroom, holding the knife against my side. I dropped to the floor to check under the beds. Nothing. I moved on to the closet, yanked open the door, and shoved the hanging clothes aside. Nothing. A plywood door led to the eaves, but it remained locked in place from the outside with 2 eye-hook latches. After searching every corner of the room, I did the same in the hallway closets, and then in my sister's room. As I had expected, the entire upstairs was empty. I waved the knife around, feeling brave and fearsome enough to scare off whoever had been messing with the door. I started to head back downstairs to resume my cartoon watching when a curious notion came to mind. Although I had dismissed the possibility of a ghost being responsible for opening the door, my playful sense of adventure remained active. The search for another living person in the house had turned up nothing, but I still had to rule out the presence of something I could not see. This led me to think of how I might catch an invisible trickster in the act. The idea of setting a trap brought a smile. I returned to my sister's room, where I had seen a blue-gray fruitcake tin on her dresser, the round kind with a couple riding in a horse-drawn carriage on the lid. I popped off the lid and carried it back to my bedroom, where I scraped 8 or 10 pennies out of my sock drawer. I beamed with pride as I carried my trap components back down the creaking stairs to the living room. I closed the upstairs door and gave it a firm tug. The door was latched, no question about it. I tried pulling the door open without turning the knob and it wouldn't budge. I opened the door again and inspected the latch thoroughly, and when I closed the door again, it responded with the same solid click. The only way the door could be opened was if someone, or something, physically turned the knob, and turning the knob would spring my simple trap. I placed the metal fruitcake pan lid on the floor directly beneath the brass doorknob. The surface of the knob was barely wide and flat enough to hold the pennies. I gathered the coins in my hand and ever so carefully placed them in a stack on top of the knob. If it turned even the slightest bit, the pennies would fall into the metal lid on the floor, sounding the alarm that someone, or something, was opening the door. Satisfied, I laid the butcher knife down on the end table and returned to the couch. My ingenious trap gave me a strange sense of comfort, as if I had set a crude burglar alarm. Black and white cartoons carried me back into a bizarre world of fun and fantasy. I watched with an amused smirk as a helpless girl ran through a dark forest, pursued by a cigar-puffing wolf wearing a raggedy top hat. During a quiet, suspenseful moment, as the wolf snuck up behind the helpless girl, the metallic sound rang out in the near silence. I twisted at the waist to look behind me. The door to the upstairs was open, and the stack of pennies remained on the doorknob. The cartoon girl on the TV let out a scream. The cartoon wolf howled with laughter. I stared at the ajar door, at the same 6 to 8 inch slash of darkness, at the stack of pennies on top of the doorknob, at the fruitcake pan lid on the carpet that the door had pushed aside. It was impossible. The door was latched, I made sure of it. It could not have been opened without turning the knob. And if the knob was turned, the pennies would fall. But they didn't. And then, somehow, I understood what was happening. I can't explain how I knew, but I did. There was something in the house with me. I couldn't see it, and I didn't know what it was, but I could feel it. I'd like to believe it was a ghost, a friendly one like Casper. All I can say for sure is that whatever opened that door, it was looking for a playmate. The invisible presence was trying to communicate with me, or pull me in, I don't know which. I stared into that slash of darkness beyond the door, and my instinct told me that whatever had opened it was not friendly. Clever, perhaps, playful, but not friendly. It felt as if whatever had opened that door, without spilling the pennies off the knob, was saying to me, "Look what I can do." My instinct wasn't to call out to ask who was there, nor was it to approach the ajar door again. My instinct told me to run. I jumped off the couch and made a dash for the front door. A push on the latch and I was outside, in the crisp autumn air under the gray sky, down the front steps and away from the house. At the exact same time, the family car rolled down the street and turned into the driveway. The timing was strange, to say the least, more like a movie than real life. My parents and my sister exited the car. I don't remember what I told them. I only remember being afraid to go back inside. When I finally did return to the living room, I don't remember how I explained the butcher knife on the end table, the fruitcake pan lid on the floor, or the stack of pennies on the doorknob. I braced myself for the worst, but whatever had opened the upstairs door several times, and the strange feeling of playful dread that had made my heart pound in my ears, was gone. I never found out what the penny ghost was, though I did come across an article many years later, written by a self-described paranormal expert. The author of the article wrote that, in some instances of paranormal activity, the unseen presence was not a ghost because it had never been human. He explained that such entities are often drawn to children, specifically those between the ages of 6 and 10. First contact usually happens when the child is alone, and it often takes the form of something harmless and playful. A ball rolling across the floor, a toy relocating itself in the child's room, and in some cases, perhaps, the opening of a door. I hope you enjoyed this tale. If you'd like to hear more, please join my mailing list by visiting delad.com or send an email to info@delad.com. Get access to free content like this audiobook, short stories and previews of upcoming content, and automatic entries into monthly giveaways. Sign up now so you don't miss anything, and I will see you next time.